Exposed. The sinister secrets I discovered as an animal control officer in the haunted woods. Jenna's heart raced as she dropped her son off at school, eager to tackle another night shift alone in the eerie woods of Hollow Creek. The whispers of the beast of Hollow Creek haunted her thoughts, an ancient spirit said to lurk in the shadows, prowling for vengeance. Just folklore, she reassured herself, until the sun dipped below the horizon and night fell like a plummet into darkness. The woods were thick with oppressive silence, the kind that clamped down on her heart. Tonight, something felt wrong. Her breath hung heavily in the air as she cruised the winding back roads, her headlights barely piercing the gloom. She flicked the switch on her radio to drown out the nagging unease, but it crackled with distortion that mirrored her spiraling nerves. Shadows seemed to dance against the trees, gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Suddenly, a frantic raccoon dashed across the path, its beady eyes wide with fright. Jenna's instincts kicked in. As she followed the creature deeper into the forest, her pulse quickened. The trees twisted grotesquely overhead, bearing jagged silhouettes against the moonlight. She felt it, then eyes watching from the dark, a prickly sensation crawling down her spine that sent chills deep into her bones. The soft crunch of dead leaves underfoot sent her pulse racing. With each snap, every rustle seemed amplified in the unsettling quiet. She stumbled upon claw marks etched into the bark of an ancient oak, deeper, more profound than any she'd seen before. They sang of a presence lurking just beyond the trees, an uninvited guest who didn't take kindly to intruders. "Stay sharp, Jenna," she whispered to herself, recalling how stories warned of the spirits of wronged animals roaming these woods. It was all just village lore, wasn't it? But this was her job, and there were lives at stake. Then she found it a decaying cabin squatting beneath a canopy of twisted limbs. A sense of dread seeped into her as she approached. The air thickened, carrying the stench of decay. A single flash of moonlight pierced through the darkness, revealing a grotesque sight. Old scraps, bones, remnants of rusted collars littered the floor. Her stomach turned, a wave of nausea crashing over her. This was more than a hunting ground. It was a shrine for the restless. But then she heard it low, growling sounds reverberated through the wood, clenching her throat tight with fear. It was as if the shadows themselves were alive, whispering secrets in an ancient tongue, urging her to flee. Jenna's heart thudded painfully against her ribcage. This wasn't folklore. This wasn't just a story. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Terror crawled up her spine as she raced back home. The sickening realization that whatever haunted the woods was hungry for more than merely vengeance. It craved companionship, an innocent heart to be claimed. A bitter chill gripped her as she approached her front door, the shadows lingering like a cloak behind her. The facade of friendly neighbors felt like a mask now, one hiding gruesome secrets. In the days that followed, whispers of animal disappearances grew louder, and paranoia lurked in every corner. The faces she once trusted transformed into masks of suspicion, each smile feeling like a sinister invitation, a vow of silence to join in the sinister fate that awaited her. Just when that anxiety seemed to peak, a blood-curdling scream shattered the quiet of another sleepless night, followed closely by menacing growls that encased her house like a vice. Shadows converged beyond her window, grotesque figures awaiting their time. Her heart pounded, raw fear flooding her senses. The forest beckoned with unanswered questions, and Jenna knew one thing for sure: if she didn't act, the next scream could belong to someone she loved. How close was she to uncovering the truth, and would it cost her everything? Jenna's eyes snapped open, heart racing. The scream had cut through her sleep like a knife, raw and desperate. She leaped out of bed, adrenaline surging through her veins. The remnants of the scream echoed in her mind, pooling dread digging deeper into her bones. It was too real. Part of her screamed to flee, but another part, the one forged by years of duty, urged her to investigate. Rushing to the window, she peered through the glass, breath caught in her throat. The world outside was shrouded in a blanket of darkness, the glow of the moon casting eerie shadows that stretched and twisted. The shadows seemed to writhe, becoming almost sentient as they danced around the edges of the tree's shadows that felt too close, too alive. Jenna squinted at the edge of the woods. Was that movement? A figure, low to the ground? She felt a chill grip her heart as a low growl reverberated through the still night air, sending shivers cascading down her spine. It was a sound infused with promise, a predator's pledge to hunt. Her instincts kicked in, forcing her feet to move toward the door, but a flicker of caution stilled her a moment longer. What if it was true? What if those stories about the beast weren't just folklore? What if it was real, and it was already close, waiting for her to step out into its domain? In one swift motion, she grabbed her flashlight from the kitchen counter and crept out, the cool night air washing over her like a cruel embrace. Every rustle of leaves heightened her senses. Each snap of a twig sent her heart racing faster. She focused on the dark patch of forest ahead, trying to dismiss the growing anxiety clawing at her sanity. As she stepped into the yard, the growl intensified, a guttural warning that made the hair on her arms stand on end. It was a reminder that in this world of shadows and secrets, danger lurked just beyond sight. Just a few steps, she urged herself, her voice trembling. The light from her flashlight broke the darkness, revealing warped trees that twisted as if trying to escape. She focused on the path, forcing herself to breathe steady. Every inch felt like a mile as she neared the tree line. Suddenly, another scream split the night. This time it was closer. A human cry soaked in terror. Without hesitation, Jenna charged forward, fear propelling her deeper into the woods. "Hello?" she called, the sound swallowed by the darkness. "Is anyone there?" Her voice trembled over the cold air, falling silent against a profound stillness that enveloped her. The growls quieted, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed on her eardrums. What if she was alone? No, she couldn't afford to dwell on that. She had to find the source of the scream. Then, the flashlight beam caught a glimpse of something near an old oak, slightly crumpled and unnaturally still. Jenna's heart dropped. It couldn't be. She crept closer, her pulse thunderous in her ears. Desperation to confirm outweighed her fear. Drawing her eye in as she reached the oak, the beam of light revealed a small jacket, a child's jacket. "Please, no," she whispered, panic pulsating through her body. The forest felt alive around her, shadows pooling in anticipation. She could feel the danger closing in. The growl returned, now mixed with a chilling laugh that echoed in her mind. Was the legend true? Had she summoned something she could never understand? Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her, a heavy thud like a heartbeat, echoing through the trees. Something was coming. Jenna turned, dread flooding her as she faced whatever had chosen this night to claim its next victim. The growl intensified, a feral and inhuman sound. Jenna felt her breath hitch, every instinct screaming for her to run. But in her chest, a flicker of defiance ignited. She wasn't the prey. But who or what would take the children? And was she brave enough to find out? The woods loomed, ominous and unyielding. There was no turning back now. Would she have the strength to face the darkness? Or would she too become a lost whisper in the wind? The shadows stretched, yawning as the darkness seemed to shiver with anticipation. Jenna's heart hammered like a warning drum, each beat shouting for her to move. Yet disbelief held her rooted in place. The child's jacket clutched in her fingers, chilled with a fear as sharp as ice. What was that sound? The heartbeat thud was closer now. She could almost feel it reverberate through the ground. She flicked the flashlight beam around her, looking for a body, a sign, anything to break the crushing weight of the unknown. The flashlight wobbled in her grip as she suppressed the urge to flee, forcing herself to stand her ground. "Who's there?" she shouted, voice cracking under pressure. The woods absorbed her words, silence swallowing them whole. Another growl pierced the air, echoing somewhere deep in the forest. It rumbled with a satisfaction that made her stomach flip. Whatever was lurking, it was enjoying the hunt. A primal instinct kicked in. Jenna knew she had to find the source of the screams before it was too late. She gripped the jacket tighter, stepping back into the tangled shadows. Suddenly, a snap like a twig snapping underfoot drilled through the complete stillness. Her flashlight beam darted in the direction of the sound, adrenaline igniting her senses. A figure moved, its outline slicing through the darkness. Was it human? Or something else entirely? "Show yourself," she yelled, voice steadier than she felt. The underbrush rustled violently, branches clawing at her as if the forest resented her presence, pushing at her with dark intent. Shadows twisted like phantoms about her, creeping closer, hungry shadows. Jenna pivoted, ready to sprint back, but the sight before her stopped her cold. The figure emerged a child. He stood at the edge of the trees, barefoot and shivering, his eyes wide, reflecting the moon's glow like two lost orbs of fear. "Help me," he cried, a sound that fractured the night. "Where's your jacket?" Jenna blurted, instinct kicking into high gear as she recognized the piece of clothing she had clutched moments before. "They took it." His words tumbled out in panic. "They said to go into the woods. They made me." "What did?" Jenna pressed, needing to understand, needing answers. "Bald man. The beast." His voice was high, trembling. Coming. The boy glanced back, and Jenna followed his gaze into the forest, dread pooling in her gut. Something lingered just beyond the trees, a weight in the air, thick and suffocating. Was it really creeping closer? An impulse screamed at her to grab the boy and run, yet something inside her hesitated. Was she abandoning the others too? More footsteps echoed behind her, now multiple sets converging. Shadows shifted, brightened and darkened as growing figures stepped into the moonlight. Jenna felt her blood run cold as she recognized them, a line of children, huddled together, terrified expressions painted across their faces. Jenna's heart split. They were alive, but what had they seen? "Run," she shouted, instinctively toward the boy as she felt the air change behind her. A low growl reverberated, vibrating in her chest like a war drum, escalating into a roar that reverberated through the night. The children screamed, and Jenna turned just in time to see a hulking shape looming behind them, a dark mass, pulsating with energy and malice. Its eyes glowed, a pair of yellow beacons in the night. "Get back," Jenna yelled, shoving the boy behind her. The darkness writhed, as if the forest itself had opened its maw, preparing to swallow them whole. When she lifted the flashlight, the beam flickered, then extinguished. Now they were left in total darkness. "Don't look back," she urged her small charges. Jenna backed up slowly, fighting the rising tide of fear threatening to drown her. She would not let the children suffer. But what if she couldn't protect them? What if the beast wouldn't let them leave? Before she knew it, she was stumbling backward, trying to find a route even as the shadows pressed in, swallowing all hope. What did the children know? What secret lay within the heart of the forest? Would Jenna unlock the truth before it was too late? Jenna felt the shadows close in, a thick black fog that gripped her soul. She couldn't see the fear in the children's eyes, but she could hear their panicked breathing. The child behind her whimpered softly, a broken sound that tightened around her heart. Suddenly, a chilling howl pierced the night, sharp enough to cut through the dread. The sound echoed off the trees, twisting and warping like the very fabric of reality was being shredded. Jenna's instincts screamed at her to run, to flee, but the weight of the children, their presence, held her ground with an iron grip. "Stay close," she commanded, the words tumbling from her lips even as doubt churned in her stomach. She couldn't let the committed camaraderie unravel. If they were going to survive, they had to stay together. The air crackled with a chilling energy that simmered all around them. Jenna stumbled, her foot catching on a protruding root. She fell to her knees, the damp earth sucking at her, pulling her down. The boy screamed as she hit the ground, instinctively clutching at the other children, who cried out in confusion. "Jenna, get up," the boy urged, tugging at her sleeve. With a grunt, she pushed herself back up. Panic coursed through her veins like ice water. The growl echoed again, deeper, and the leaves rustled with a life of their own, as if the forest held its breath. We have to move," she stammered, her eyes wide, darting into the darkness, where something blurred and slithered just beyond the light of her flashlight. It was more than a shadow, it was a pulse, an awareness, wrapping around them like a boa constrictor. Jenna gathered the children, a line of trembling bodies, and led them deeper into the woods, away from whatever was trailing behind them. Every step felt like a gamble with fate. Could she protect them from the beast? Or would they all vanish into the night, just like the missing children? Where do we go? A girl whimpered, her small voice trembling with fear. The path, Jenna shouted, desperation thickening her words. We need to find the path back. But the darkness twisted, it shifted, transforming the familiar into the menacing. Trees loomed overhead, their branches like skeletal hands reaching for their hearts. She struggled to keep her bearings, adrenaline pumping as the sense of dread thickened the air. Was the path even real anymore? Were they wandering deeper into the maw of the forest? They dashed forward, where things felt just a little lighter. But the growling intensified, morphing into a low chuckle, a mocking sound that made her skin crawl. Jenna turned, trying to catch sight of the source, but only darkness greeted her. Keep going, she urged, pushing the children onward even as fear gnawed at her resolve. They had no time for hesitation. They had to escape, had to find safety altogether. Suddenly, a blinding flash tore through the air, illuminating the clearing around them for a fleeting moment. Jenna's heart lurched in her chest as she saw the beast. An enormous figure, pungent and grotesque, its skin glistening in the brief light like oily leather, eyes glimmered with greed. It struck the ground with a heavy thud, shaking the ground beneath her feet as it panted, drool pooling at its jagged jaws. It was immense, a nightmare come to life. And as she glanced back at the children, Jenna realized their faces were pale, white ghosts against the vibrant dread of the woods. We need to go, she shouted, her voice merging with the roar of the wind that erupted around them. But as she turned, the darkness swallowed the path ahead. All that lay before them was a wall of shadow, a void that whispered of danger and despair. In the stillness, Jenna felt the weight of decision, a truth pressing down harder than fear. It was more than survival. It was facing the very heart of the darkness. What do we do now? The boy whimpered, eyes wide with hopelessness. In that moment, Jenna understood. They couldn't run blindly anymore. They had to confront whatever was lurking, whatever held these woods in its sinister grip. But out of the shadows, whispered voices began to rise, a chorus of faint, pleading cries, echoing like a chant intertwining with the howls of the beast. They weren't alone anymore, though terror marched hand in hand with an irresistible lure. Just beyond the shade, something shimmered, a glimpse of truth dancing on the edge of their perception. Follow me, she whispered, propelled not by strength but a yearning to uncover the sinister truths lying in the heart of the forest. But what awaited them in the depths of the unknown? Would it lead them to salvation, or drag them further into despair? The whispers thickened, weaving through the trees as Jenna edged closer to the shimmering light, which danced tantalizingly just out of reach. It drew her in like a moth to a flame, a promise of safety shining in the relentless darkness. But every heartbeat pounded with a deeper truth, a chilling realization that stepping forward could lead them into the jaws of the beast. Stay close, she reminded the children, her voice tense and barely above a whisper. They were her charge, her responsibility, but the weight of fear pressed heavy on her shoulders. If she faltered in faith, would they, too, crumble into despair? The fog thickened, swirling at their feet like spectral hands. Each child huddled closer to Jenna, wide eyes reflecting the faint light. They felt it as she did, the promise of something. Maybe not hope, but an answer lurking behind the soft glow. What if there's nothing there? The girl next to her asked, dread seeping into her voice. We have to try, Jenna replied, forcing a reassuring smile even though her heart raced with doubt. Trust was the only armor they had against the encroaching shadows. Then, a sound shifted in the distance, breaking the stifling humidity of silence. The growl had transformed into a low snarl, heavy with menace and ripe with hunger. It clung to the night air, a reminder of the horrors lurking just beyond sight. Jenna turned, scanning the darkness for any sign of the beast, but only shadows greeted her. Jenna, another child whispered as they moved forward, her fingers chilled against his arm. The flickering light danced again, a bobbing ember in the blackness. It beckoned her, flickering like some twisted star in a sky of despair. She stepped toward it, each movement drawing her closer to the possibility of uncovering whatever dreadful secret lay ahead. The children followed, hesitant feet pushing through the clouds of fog, their breath quickening in unison. Look, the boy shouted, pointing ahead. As they closed in, the shimmer sharpened, a vision forming through the haze. It was a figure, a woman. A wretched silhouette stood on the other side of the expanse. Her face was obscured, but her tattered dress unfurled into the air around her like wisps of darkness. The whispers found clarity, echoing their disquiet with chilling precision. "Help us," her voice weighed heavy, a lure in a sea of dread. "Is she?" Jenna paused. Could she trust this apparition? Desperation crept in, pulling her mind toward the idea that perhaps this was their chance. But as she took another step forward, that fragile hope was shattered as the beast's guttural howl split the air once again, intertwining with the woman's plea. "What do you want?" Jenna cried out, her voice wavering as the ground seemed to vibrate beneath her. "Find the truth," the figure echoed, her shadowy form flickering and warping. Dark tendrils of mist began to curl around Jenna, tightening with malevolent intention. Suddenly, the air was filled with screams. The children shouted, clutching at her like frightened sparrows as the thick darkness roared around them, threatening to swallow them whole. "Run!" she shouted. There was no more time. Jenna yanked the children close, tugging them into movement, their feet pounding against the earth, racing back toward the dark. But the beast was closer, relentless, and its breath was the storm that followed them. They darted through the trees, weaving around trunks and branches as the cries of the woman rang in their ears, a haunting reminder that the forest was alive, and they were but prey within it. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and roots sprang up, lashing around their ankles, trying to ensnare them. "Hold on," Jenna shouted, gripping the nearest child as they struggled against the wildness of the woods. With every step, a fear clawed at her throat, a choking dread of what awaited if they failed to escape. The shadows grew denser, and her heartbeat thrashed like a wild drum. The path behind them disappeared into oblivion. There was no going back. Burrs and branches snapped, and Jenna could feel the breath of the beast, hot on their heels. "Push through," she yelled, pulling the children toward the last remnants of light that flickered between the trees. Then they burst into a clearing, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like they had escaped the nightmare until a piercing shriek sliced through the air, freezing them in place. "What was that?" the girl asked, her voice barely a whisper. Beneath the glistening moonlight, something stirred at the edge of the clearing, eyes glowing like shards of obsidian. They weren't alone. Not yet. "What do we do now?" The boy quivered, looking at Jenna, terror etched across his small face. The answer hovered just beyond reach, hidden in the shadows. And whatever it was, it waited for them, hungry and eager for the chase to continue. As the children huddled around her, Jenna's resolve hardened. There was only one way forward, and it led deep into the jaws of the terror that awaited them. They had to face it. But first, they needed to survive the night and uncover the truth buried in those haunted woods. Jenna stood frozen, heart pounding, as the glowing eyes inched closer. The children pressed against her, their small bodies quaking with terror. Fear was a living thing, wrapping around them, squeezing breath from their lungs. In that moment, the clearing felt like an arena, and they were the prey. "Back away," Jenna hissed, her voice sharp, but it was drowned out by another wretched scream that echoed through the woods. The creature's form began to materialize from the shadows, each step revealing more of its grotesque body twisted by moonlight. It was hulking, with sinewy limbs and jagged teeth shining like knives. "What is that?" the girl whimpered, eyes wide, not daring to breathe. "I don't know, but we can't let it catch us," Jenna murmured, knowing each second felt like an hour, time stretching taut with dread. The creature paused, sniffing the air, its head tilting as it focused on them. With a deep growl, it lumbered forward, claws digging into the ground, relentless. Jenna turned on her heel, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "Run!" They tore back into the grasp of the woods, branches slapping against their skin, the underbrush crunching beneath their hurried steps. The beast was close, each thunderous footfall resonating through the ground like a death knell. "Faster! Don't look back!" Jenna shouted, the desperation making her voice sharp and piercing. They barreled deeper into the trees, the light of the moon fading as the canopy thickened. Shadows loomed larger, dark shapes reaching out as if to guide the monstrous creature to its prey. The whispers returned, a sickening chorus of voices bearing secrets and taunts, echoing around them. "Where do we go?" The boy gasped, glancing over his shoulder, breathless. "We find a place to hide," Jenna replied, her mind racing for options, but her vision was clouded by panic. She scanned the surroundings and spotted a hollow tree trunk nearby. "There, in there." Without hesitation, she yanked the children toward the tree. The beast's snarl filled the air, a noise like the ripping of fabric, violent and raw. They tumbled inside the dark cavity, the scent of damp earth and decay filling their nostrils. They huddled close, wide eyes peering from the hollow, waiting. Jenna's heart hammered in her chest. Footsteps thudded closer, shaking the ground, and she clutched the two youngest, whispering for silence. The creature stopped outside, nostrils flaring, its breath a hot wind washing over them as it prowled, searching, sensing. "Please don't find us," the girl whimpered, squeezing Jenna's hand tight. The pause felt like an eternity. The whispers surged around them, echoing warnings of deceit and danger. Then, a low growl rumbled from the creature. It seemed to lose interest, pacing away, but Jenna knew they weren't safe. She could almost hear its thought, where to go next. The echoes of that thought reached deep into her mind, twisting her fear into something almost tangible. After what felt like hours, the footsteps faded, swallowed by the night. A muted relief washed over Jenna, but she knew they couldn't stay where they were. "We have to move," she breathed, glancing at the terrified faces surrounding her. "I can't," the boy whispered, shaking his head, tears pooling in his eyes. "We'll find safety. Together," she promised, though uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. She had to lead them. Failure was not an option. Cautiously, they crawled out, scanning the treetops, waiting for the shadows to betray them with movement. "What do we do now?" the girl asked, her voice trembling. The fear seeped into every word. Jenna took a deep breath. "We follow the river. It'll guide us. Trust me," she said, even as an uneasy feeling nestled in her gut. A flicker of doubt crossed her mind. The river? Would it lead them to freedom or deeper into danger? But before she could voice her fears, an unearthly howl shattered the silence, a sound that pierced the air, vibrating through them, a promise of relentless pursuit. "Come on," Jenna urged, shoving her fears aside as they dashed toward the sound of rushing water, the only hope of salvation tearing them away from the horrifying truth waiting to be uncovered. The beast was still behind them, and it would not rest until they were caught. What awaited them at the river's edge? Was it a way out, or another trap lying in wait? The darkness held secrets they had yet to discover. The river roared in the distance, its sound like 1,000 angry voices bellowing warnings. Jenna's instincts screamed at her as they sprinted on, feet pounding against the forest floor, the chill of the air clawing at their skin. The howls echoed again, closer this time, raw and desperate like blood hunting for a wound. "Keep going. Don't stop," Jenna urged, her panic alight with every utterance. She glanced at the children, gasping for breath, their little faces twisted in fear, the kind of fear that roots deep into the soul. As the trees began to give way, the terrain shifted beneath their feet. Jenna could taste the dampness in the air, acrid and thick. They broke through the thicket and the river roared into view, an angry, churning beast, its waters black and unpredictable. "Is that it? The river?" The boy's voice quivered, disbelief mixing with fear. Jenna nodded, though her heart faltered. They couldn't see how far it stretched or where it led. All they knew was that it might offer a slim chance of escape. "Get down. We have to hide," Jenna shouted, pulling the children behind a large rock that jutted out of the riverbank. The water hissed and gurgled, hiding its own dark secrets beneath the surface. They huddled, breathless, as the sounds of the forest faded into a tense silence, an ominous hush cloaking them. Jenna could hardly hear herself think over the rushing water. The shadows around them grew darker, more pronounced, like tendrils creeping down the precipice of fear. Then they heard it again, the unmistakable thud of heavy footsteps creeping closer, accompanied by deep, wet growls. Jenna's heart raced, a drum signaling the end. What if it could sense them? What if it could smell their fear? "Please," Jenna the girl whispered, eyes darting around, searching for salvation or perhaps just an end to the menacing crawl of dread. "What if it comes here? What do we do?" A cold sweat trickled down Jenna's spine. She shushed them instinctively, her mind racing with desperate thoughts. Focus, she told herself. She had to think of something. We just wait, she murmured, gripping the small hand she had pulled so closely to her. The wait felt both endless and achingly brief as they clustered together, the warmth of their bodies fighting a losing battle against the encroaching chill of the river's night. A low growl broke the stillness, and Jenna saw it, a shadow moving awkwardly among the trees, searching, prowling, sniffing. It wasn't just looking for them. It was hunting. Suddenly, without warning, the creature jerked its head up, nostrils flaring, as if it had caught a hint of their scent. It paused, muscles taut in the moonlight, before tearing off into the brush. A howl erupted, primal and haunting, shivering through them, igniting a terror that clawed at their insides. Run! Jenna screamed, her voice slicing through the stillness as she propelled them toward the water, the rush of the dark current calling to them like a siren's song. The creatures had to be far enough now. They had to be. They rushed into the icy embrace of the river, the water threatening to pull them down into its depths. It was a risk, a gamble that could either save them or drown them. Jenna fought against the current, urging the children along, even as the undercurrent tugged at them, trying to drag them into the abyss. Bubbles swirled around them, the water turbulent and fierce, but Jenna's grip was solid. She felt their bodies surge behind her, inconsiderate of the terror lurking on the banks. But as they turned to look back for a moment, panic bubbled up again. The creature was there, peering into the darkness at the edge of the water, eyes glowing with a feverish hunger. A cold wave of realization crashed over Jenna. They weren't safe. Not yet. Just then, something brushed against her leg, slick and heavy. Jenna's heart skipped as she recoiled instinctively, her arms tightening around the children. What lurked beneath the surface? As Jenna's heart sank, the river roared, and the darkness thickened around them. What haunted secret lay within those depths? Would they be swallowed whole by the beast of the river, or was a more sinister fate yet to come? Jenna fought desperately against the current, her limbs growing heavy as the chilling water wrapped around them. Silence fell momentarily, only to be shattered by a violent splash, followed by the wild thrashing of something beneath the surface. The panic in the children's eyes mirrored her own dread, what was lurking just out of sight. "Keep your heads down," Jenna hissed, fighting the urge to look back. The cold water stole the breath from her lungs, yet she pushed the children forward, each stroke carrying their fragile lives further from the banks where the creature waited. But even the river, usually a herald of safety, grew treacherous. The water swirled with an unnatural force, dragging them down as shadows seemed to undulate beneath the surface. Jenna clenched her teeth, urging her tired body to move faster, to fight harder against the inexorable pull of the depths. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw it, something large and dark coiling just beneath the surface, a shape that seemed to pulse with malice. The water rippled and churned, and Jenna's heart pounded erratically in her chest. "Don't look," she commanded, forcing the children to hunch even lower, hoping to conceal them from whatever stalked them beneath the dark waves. The force pulling at her legs was relentless, and Jenna risked a glance back. Waves slapped against the riverbank, where a dark shape was now visible on the shore, prowling back and forth. The creature's silhouette was monstrous, a twisting shadow that dripped with slime, glistening under the moonlight as if it were part of the darkness itself. A low growl rose from the depths, resonating with a chilling familiarity that made Jenna's blood run cold. It wasn't just hunting, it was anticipating, calculating. The thought that there might be more than one of them fed her horror, fueling a growing sense of dread. "Jenna." The boy's voice fractured her concentration, the tremor in his tone a signal of his terror. She tightened her grip on their hands, desperation fueling her resolve. "What if it gets us? What do we do?" "Stay quiet and keep swimming," she snapped, even as her heart whispered that she didn't have a plan. The swirling waters intensified, tossing them like mere toys caught in stormy seas. Fear clawed at her throat, but there was no choice now. They were too far into danger to turn back. Suddenly, the water erupted beside Jenna, sending icy tendrils spraying into her face. She gasped as something shot past her, thrashing violently and disappearing in a sudden plume of bubbles. The boy screamed, and she turned just in time to see the monster's head rise above the surface, its eyes glowing a baleful, knowing gaze locking onto her with malevolence. "Swim!" Jenna screamed. Each stroke became frantic, desperation closing in like a vice. But the river darkened around them, the water taking on a mind of its own as powerful waves began to swell that eye in the chaos. Jenna noticed a dim light glowing ahead, faint and flickering like a beacon through the murky depths of the night. Was it hope or a mirage? It felt too risky, too tantalizing to ignore. "Over there. Swim to the light," she cried, directing her efforts toward the faint glow. She felt the children respond, their tiny hands alive with determination, despite the gnawing fear tethering them to the water's depths. But a rumble echoed from beneath, a guttural growl that shook the very core of the river. The current surged violently, drawing them down. With the light flickering and dimming in the distance, Jenna felt the grip of darkness closing in around them. "Jenna," the girl pleaded, her voice barely audible over the roar of the river. "I won't let you go. I swear." Jenna yelled back, using every ounce of strength to fight against the cold embrace pulling at her legs. But there was something sinister watching, waiting for their final gasp. The light flickered once more as shadows surged from below, rising like a tide. Jenna could feel a twist in her gut that warned her what awaited them at the end of their desperate swim. Would the light lead to salvation or death? And as that question loomed large in her mind, she couldn't shake off the eerie thought that perhaps whatever hovered below was not finished with them yet. The pull of the current was relentless, wrapping around Jenna like a serpent intent on dragging her under. She pushed through the icy grip, staving off panic, but the light ahead began to dim and flicker, teasing her senses with both hope and despair. "Jenna, I can't." The girl's voice trembled, water splashing against her face as she fought to stay afloat. The boy beside her was gasping, his body trembling with effort and fear. Fear that twisted inside Jenna, a tight coil knotting around her chest. "Just a little further." "You're doing great," Jenna shouted, though her own lungs felt ready to burst. With every stroke, she could feel the creature's sinister presence hovering just below, as if it thrived on the desperation of their struggle. The water churned around her, as if the river itself were alive, a sentient foe. Suddenly, the water erupted again, sending shockwaves through her body. Jenna choked as cold water surged into her mouth. A massive shadow shot past, revealing sharp, glistening teeth. It was too fast, too agile. What was it? "Move. Now," she screamed, driving her arms through the water, practically begging her limbs to cooperate as dread clawed at her sanity. Behind her, the surface exploded in a violent splash. Jenna risked a glance back, and her heart plummeted. The mass rose from the depths, a grotesque figure silhouetted against the moonlit backdrop. Its skin glistened, twisted, and covered in nightmarish scars that crisscrossed like battle wounds. Then, a chilling realization: this wasn't just one monster. It was a swarm. Shapes danced under the water, thrumming with a dark kind of hunger that made the hairs on her arms stand straight. "Jenna, please." The boy whimpered, his grip growing weaker. "Hold on," she urged, desperation spiraling into terror. She couldn't afford to look back anymore. Pressing her mind into that flickering light, she urged herself forward. "Go. Just concentrate." The glow pulsated in time with her racing heartbeat. Each flicker illuminated fleeting glimpses of the children's terrified faces. They were trusting her, clinging to her with their little fingers, even as the shadows below encroached closer. "Jenna," the girl cried out again. This time, though, it wasn't just fright. It was raw panic. A loud roar erupted from the depths, a sound so fierce it felt as if it were shaking the very ground beneath them. It echoed through the night, drowning out all reason. Jenna felt the creature's intent, its hunger, creeping closer like fog. "Swim." She was barely a whisper now, a command wrapped in desperation. She kicked harder, launching herself and the children toward the light. And just as they seemed to pull closer, Jenna felt the current shift, one powerful rush that tugged at their limbs, as if the world had decided to flip upside down. Her heart raced, dread tangling with hope as she caught sight of a ledge just beyond the water. The shore. She pointed, adrenaline surging through her veins. But in that moment, the water surged violently, and arms' tentacles, more like shot past her, snatching at the children. Jenna lunged forward, adrenaline flooding her body. No, she screamed as she reached out, fingertips brushing against the boy's hand. The grip slipped, and for a heartbeat, Jenna felt the confines of terror tighten around her chest. The children were being dragged back, sucked into the abyss. No, I want to let you go. Jenna reached again, but the shadows churned, enveloping them in darkness. The light faded away, as the dark presence surged closer still. Everything was lost, but as Jenna felt her own breath quickening, an electric spark pulsed through the water, a revelation, stunning and terrifying. What if that light was not just salvation, but a lure? Through the confusion, an image flared in her mind, a flash of something monumental, something that should never have been disturbed. Beneath those waves, a secret lay festering, waiting for someone to find it. As horror washed over her, a deeper question echoed. What had she awakened? And as the abyss claimed them, Jenna grappled with the horrifying truth. There would be no answers unless they could survive the night. What truly waited below? A monster? Or something much worse? The current tugged mercilessly at Jenna, pulling her into the abyss. Every stroke felt weaker, every gasp a battle against the cold to keep her head above water. She could almost hear the whispers from the depths, taunting her. You shouldn't have come here, but there was no time for fear. She felt the children's hands slipping from her grasp, their little fingers no longer able to cling to hope. It ignited a blaze of strength within her. I want to let you go. The cry erupted from her throat, fierce and primal, echoing into the darkness. Jenna fought her way forward, clawing against despair with everything she had. With a burst of determination, she propelled her body through the churning water toward the glimmer that beckoned them closer. Each beat of her heart pounded with resolve. As the children surged ahead, Jenna's instincts kicked in, leading them toward the softly shimmering light that now felt like salvation. They had to make it, for their sake. Suddenly, sharp claws brushed against her legs, the beast rising beneath, hungry. It roared, rising up with a malevolence that stole the air from her lungs. In that split second, Jenna turned, locking eyes with the monstrous face of the creature, its jagged mouth open wide, displaying rows of glistening teeth. Swim, she shouted, the command bursting from her as she hoisted the boy into her arms. The other child kicked furiously beside them, adrenaline flaring as they all surged toward that beacon of light. They had to escape the torrent of darkness. With one last powerful kick, they broke the surface, dragging themselves toward the rocky shore, collapsing onto the wet sand, gasping for breath with hearts pounding. Jenna looked around frantically, making sure all the children were accounted for. Relief washed over her as she noticed their terrified faces, but the shadows still lurked behind, growing darker. But they were not safe yet. The creature roared again from the water, unsettled by their escape. It thrashed, leaving waves of fury crashing against the shore. But Jenna set her jaw, determination blazing in her chest. We need to keep moving. In that moment, something in Jenna snapped. She couldn't hide from the darkness forever. They needed to confront whatever it was that dwelled in the woods and kept taking children, whatever haunted these woods. The whispers grew louder, more pronounced. Help us! It was a faint voice weaving through the air, luring and warning at the same time. We have to stop it, Jenna murmured, steeling herself as a flicker of power surged through her. She looked at the kids, her eyes fierce. You don't have to be afraid anymore. I promise. Taking the lead, she urged the children back to where the forest met the water. The shadows writhed, a thick fog swirling around them, but Jenna pushed forward with steady resolve. The air crackled with mystery, the very ground whispering ancient secrets. The dark beast emerged from the water, its great form rising up like a towering wave. What do you want? Jenna shouted, steadying herself against the onslaught of fear. Mustering a voice that could pierce the swirling mist, she demanded answers. Inexplicably finding courage in the unknown, the beast paused, recognition flickering in its fiery eyes as it regarded her. It roared, but this time Jenna didn't flinch. She held her ground, her heart pounding not just with fear, but with an unwavering promise to protect these children. The energy crackled, and the echoes of that ancient creature reverberated in the night. Jenna moved closer, calling out the names of the lost ones. Why do you take them? What makes this your domain? The shadowy miasma around them thickened, swirling into shapes that resembled faces ghosts of the children it had claimed. They emerged around the creature, eyes wide and pleading. Jenna's heart crumbled. These were lost souls, trapped within the darkness and pain. Help us, they echoed, as if painting the true wickedness of their fate. Jenna's heart tightened. I will help you. You're not alone anymore. The declaration slipped from her lips, resonating with the tenderness and strength born of desperation. As if answering a rallying cry, the children stood beside her, small hands gripping her tightly, ready to face whatever horror lay ahead together. The cacophony of whispers grew, a swirling chorus urging them on, urging for closure, for salvation. Together, they stepped forward as shadows wove around them, a tapestry of fear and longing. The moment felt electric, charged with the potential to turn the tide. Show us the truth, Jenna shouted, voice strong and unwavering. We're not afraid. The beast let out a final roar, harmonizing with the cries from within the forest, a sound that reverberated against the trees and echoed through the night. And then, in a blink, the oppressive weight that burdened the air began to dissolve. The shadows retreated, the cries of the restless abruptly quieting. Light swelled around them, enveloping the children and Jenna in a serene glow, throwing back the dark. She could feel warmth wrapping around her, pushing away the terror, handing her the strength to confront the truth. With one final glance back at the fading darkness of the woods, Jenna knew that they were free. At long last, they had confronted their fears, and the chains binding those lost souls within the woods had been broken. The haunted whispers faded to silence, leaving only the heartbeat of life behind. As they stepped into the sanctuary of morning light, Jenna turned to the children, their worried faces melting into smiles. Hope sprang forth, vibrant and life-affirming, radiating warmth in each of them. You're safe now, she whispered, squeezing their hands tight, her heart swelling with renewed purpose. The sun began to rise, the dark woods retreating into the shadows, not to consume any more innocent lives. They had faced the unknown and emerged victorious. In that moment, Jenna realized that sometimes confronting the dark could lead to the brightest dawn. They had uncovered the truth, and with it, they had found courage. They could share their story and stand as protectors against the shadows that roamed on the edge of woods. Jenna took a deep breath, the scent of fresh earth and sunlight filling her lungs. They were free to live, and she promised herself she would never let the darkness take control again. With gratitude murmuring through her heart, Jenna looked at the children, and something profound settled within her. Now, with a fierce hope guiding them, they would move forward into a new beginning, leaving the haunting shadows behind for good. Thank you for joining us on this wild ride. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us spread the word together.